The general idea for the dialogue editing is to make everything very, very smooth, that it plays without, essentially, the concept is, and I heard it from very well-established and very, very good, excellent mixer, Lee Dichter, who said that the dialogue for the film is like a spine, or let's say as a spine for the body. Without dialogue, you cannot really have the story because it was written, it was performed, it means it has to be heard. And the idea of dialogue editing is such that if it's done well, nobody knows that anything was done to it. If it's done badly, then everybody hears this. They don't know why it's badly, but they sort of are distracted. The audience is distracted by bad cuts, by changing tone and changing backgrounds. I know that I'm sort of speaking very widely, and I will present this when I cut 2 scenes in this film. But normally what I do as a dialogue editor, I screen the project. If I have the line script available and the sound reports, I look at the scenes to see, at the sound reports to see how they were mic'd. If there was 1 boom, 2 booms, were actors having the body mics, or everything was on 1 boom. And then I try to look what is provided in the OMF. In this case, I do not have an access to the sound report, so I really have to rely on my ear, my judgment, my experience. It seems that I have 2 tracks. The first 2 tracks are actually camera mics, and then 2 bottom tracks are it's boom. Most of the time, and I'm just scrolling to hear what I have. And while I'm doing that, I hear that these tracks are panned. You don't cut dialogue having left and right. It's very confusing. So you have the dialogue always coming from the center. It's the same in the theater. When we go to the theater, the dialogue, all spoken word, comes from the center track. It's sort of how our brain works and how it registers the spoken word. This is the language which is established historically, and this is how we still do that. Gravity, it was probably one of the first films where the mixer actually panned the dialogue left and right to give us a sense where the characters are sort of floating in the space. And even though they weren't consistent with it either, because when they used as a formula to go with the actor left, right, up, down, it was very distracting. The story was sort of falling apart creatively. So most of the dialogue, even in the Gravity, is coming from the center speaker. They try to use a little bit for the creative aspect of it to pan the dialogue, the major dialogue. So here I would do first, I would take off the panning of the film because I don't really need it. It's very, as I said, very, very distracted. I cannot even listen to it. It just confuses me. So now I know that the dialogue will come from the center, for the center speaker. The second thing which I do when I sort of decide, okay, this is how they, at least the first scene, because every scene can be mic'd different ways, so I cannot assume that if the first scene has this kind of setup of the microphones, the entire film will be done this way. So I just do it scene by scene. So I established that the first 2 tracks are camera mics, which I don't really want to use. Probably the editor was cutting with the camera mics, and then they replace the camera mics with the properly recorded sound, and it seems like it sounds like it's a boom. I have 2 tracks, but it's a mono recording. Dialogue is always recorded mono. And they are just provided 2 because most likely the device they recorded the sound on, even if it's just 1 microphone plugged in, gives us 2 tracks. So I really need only 1 of them. So I will sort of make this assessment, which I just did. The second thing which I do is I look what the guide track is, meaning the sound which comes from the Final Cut Pro or the Avid, which is attached, embedded into the QuickTime, which when I import the QuickTime, I extract the sound. And if I get what I get here, I would call the assistant, the picture assistant, and said, I'm very, very sorry, but you have to redo the guide track. Why? Because if I play it for you just a little bit, has music and the dialogue. So essentially, first of all, it's very difficult for me to hear from the guide track because music is louder. It's done. It's not mixed yet, so I understand why. But I need a separation from music and the dialogue and the production sound. First of all, when I look at the waveform, I see if I'm in sync. I see if I'm missing something. So just simply visually, it's like a double check for me. I don't have to constantly keep scrolling and seeing if I'm missing something or not, because I don't have as much time cut dialogue as the picture editor has when they memorize every frame of the film. I have a certain amount of time and I have to really move quickly. So simpler it's prepared for me, then better work I can do. The second reason, which is even more important, my own comfort, is that this OMF, the session open with the guide track, will go to the ADR studio to record actors' lines. And we do not have time to create the separate guide tracks from the OMFs. So there always should be done separation, that the music track is one and the dialogue is another in the guide track. So then when I go to the ADR studio, I play actor just the guide track with their lines when they can hear it. Otherwise, they cannot perform having music. This also applies to the music editor and the composer. If this is a temp music, not the final music, the composer composing the music and musicians playing, listen to the dialogue, the expression of the music, the emotion, the way how they perform, it's based on the story, and the story is provided by the dialogue. Having a temp music, they cannot really hear the dialogue because the temp music is playing as well, so it's also distracted. So it's like a step one when you prepare anything for as an editor, picture editor, when you have to give your work out to the next crew which takes over, you have to think about what they need and why. So there always should be separation of the music and dialogue provided for the essentially everybody who works on the film. So I would sort of complain, right, having this here. I won't complain. I will try to cut with it. But I just simply wanted to point out that this is sort of a problem. The way how I do that, and everybody should do that the same way, you never cut in the OMF track. So as you can see, I created, well, I cannot count. Dialogue 4 I missed. I create 6 dialogue tracks. And the amount of dialogue tracks really depends on how complex the scene is and also how many microphones were used for the scene. In this case, it's literally one boom. So I really don't need more than 6 tracks. So as I said, let's assume that I already screened the scene, which I obviously did, but just for the time constraint, I won't do that. So the first audio file which I have here is the guy laying down on the ground and he's moving his can and I can see somebody pass by. I just move this to dialogue 1. At the moment when I move the audio file up from the OMF, I mute it. It's once again, it's okay. Everything is a safety for me as a person because I know that I can make a mistake, I can be distracted, I can be called and come back. And then if I don't have some kind of code or method saying, okay, I cut this already, then I may be lost. I may miss the take, I may miss some line because I'm distracted. So for me, it's a code. Anytime I dealt with something, it's muted. I know if this is muted on the OMF track below, meaning the sort of tracks provided from the picture department, I don't have to worry about it. It's muted, it's done. Another thing which I have to say, you really cannot cut dialogue on the speakers unless you are in a very pristine mixing studio where there is no distraction. I always cut dialogue on headphones, and every dialogue editor cuts dialogue wearing headphones. We won't do that here because I want you to have a benefit of actually hearing what I'm doing, so that's why we have speakers. But normally, I will strongly, strongly encourage all of you to cut with headphones. There is one additional thing which I actually should add. Because there is no spoken word, essentially this audio file should go not on the dialogue track, but on the additional tracks which I should create, which are production effects tracks. The idea of it is such that the sound would then ended up, because there is nobody speaking, would be buzzed into the effects stems. So I have only created 6 dialogue tracks, but I probably will do 2 additional tracks and I will call them production effects tracks. Production effects 1 production effects too. Okay. Even if you will decide to mix on, even if the entire project from the beginning to the end will be done by a very small crew or by just the author, director, and screenwriter, whatever capacity you'll be doing the film, you still want to prepare the film and have a final product as professionally prepared as possible. The reason for creating production effects tracks is that this all movement, the background, the shaking of the cap with the change inside, it's really an effect. It should go to the effects stems. The stems are sort of like elements of the soundtrack. There will be dialogue, there will be music, there will be effects, there will be background, like a basic for stems. The purpose for it is that if your film will be chosen by the foreign distribution, they most likely will want to dub the dialogue. So they will hire Korean, Chinese, or French actors to replace the dialogue. But everything else, what you've done creatively, the music track which you have, the backgrounds, effects, and follies you decided to have in this scene or the entire film, this is your creative decision and nobody has a right to change it. So that's why we create the separate stems. Then the foreign distributor takes the dialogue in English out, but everything else, the way how you mix the effects, how loud you want the music at a certain point to be, even people are walking, you don't want to hear them, you don't have follies. These are all creative decisions which have to be then respected by the distributor, foreign distributor. The only thing they're changing is the dialogue if they dub the actors. So instead of following this sound of the footsteps and change jingling in the cap, you already have it. If you left it on the dialogue track and then the stem of the dialogue created, it would go out with the entire dialogue track. So then you would have to recreate the footsteps and the shaking of the cap. That's why you put this on the production effects. So then when you are mixing this, you will bus it, you will send it through the pipe where the effects end up. So then it becomes part of your soundtrack going to the foreign distribution. So the first thing is, of course, before I would start editing, I would have something what we call spotting session. I would sit down with the director and make a decision how we are approaching the sound, what the idea is. Since this is my film from the beginning to the end, let's assume that this is your film when you are doing from the beginning to the end, you have this conversation with yourself. So then you have to decide if you want the sound of the guy sitting on the sidewalk be a hard cut from the shot before of New York City or whenever we are, of the city, or you want this somehow to blend. All what it's in the beginning is just music playing, but I'm assuming that would be nice to actually hear this was shot on MOS, so this all has to be recreated by effects and backgrounds. But this is sort of the creative decision which has to be made by you as a director, sound editor, and everybody else, or actually if you are doing only dialogue, to talk with the director what the idea is. Just to simplify our process, so this is a choice, but I would say that I actually want to have a hard cut. This is the music, they are opening credits, now we are coming hard into the film, to the beginning of the film. So I want this to be a hard cut. To do that, I'm just simply looking for the first frame of this shot. Here I am. So I usually expand this for one frame, overlapping the outcoming shot, and I put one frame fade. It's really inaudible, but this sound doesn't pop. I don't know if it's audible. I will make this even louder. There is a movement on the beginning, just literally a second frame of the shot. So for the audience, this is very distracting. I'm scrolling this over and over. I know what it is. It's a shake of the cap. But if we play the scene, the audience will never really realize what this is. It sounds like a mistake. It sort of distracts you and takes you out from the opening scene of the film. So if something like that happens, even if it's completely, absolutely legitimate, it's a sync, it's not even a crew, it's literally a shake of the cap, what I would do, I would remove it. So when we are getting into this shot, I want this to be very, very clean. So I have to see what I can do. So I just simply extend it. I open this and I want to see. There is a moment. This is something which I can probably steal from here. And I really need 2 frames, so I'm not going to be worrying about that much. I just did the copy of it. Let me see. What is the first frame? It's here. I take this out. I just copied 4 frames, so I'll just simply paste them. And let's see if this is any better. A lot of decisions made, which I just did, it's really, there is no rule. You have to trust your hearing and know what else is coming at the same time with this take. I personally think it's better. Especially, we are playing this from nothing to the already background of New York City, but I'm assuming, or whichever city we are in, but I'm assuming that there will be backgrounds given. There will be cars going by. There will be some general dim of the city. So this hard cut, we will just feel that we are starting something new, and without this little blame of the king from the money, I think it's a better cut. Somebody might say, oh, you know what, we are splitting hair. Well, dialogue very often is about splitting hair. How precise, how clean do you want to be? I, not long ago, worked on a project where it was recorded in a real house with a very creaky floor. It was driving me absolutely crazy because it seems like I would have to loop half of the film. There was no budget for it. The actors didn't want to even approach the idea. But what was the most important was the director said, you know what, I like it. I want the authenticity of the location. Yes, these floors are loud, but the actors were very well mic'd, so it wasn't that the floor was louder than the spoken word, not at all. You could understand everything. But coming from the school that everything has to be extremely pristine, I would just program this for the ADR. Director said, I don't want it, I love it. It took me 3 days and I stopped hearing it, meaning that I accepted that this is the aesthetic of it. This is what the director wants and I have to sort of provide it. So only in the most either loud or obnoxious squeaks I would cut this, or when it actually was on the word, I would not necessarily go and ADR this. I would look for the other takes, looking if this line was without this very loud squeak because actor moved the body in a slightly different moment of the dialogue. So everything is a decision which has to be made, and you as a director who is doing everything, you have to negotiate with yourself, how do you want this film to play? And then you have to convey this to yourself and agree, or to somebody who is cutting dialogue for you, that this is the style you want to do. So then I know how far I have to go with cleaning everything. So we start with the hard cut. Okay, so now I have the first take, the first shot. So now I'm sort of going to the second shot. I'm putting this on the track below. As I already said, I will mute this so I don't have to worry about that. Did I deal with this or not? Now I'm playing the second take. Shot which I brought.
Yeah, well, okay.
All right.
Yeah,
this is actually a very interesting thing.
Okay? Come on.
It is a parallel action because, I'm assuming it is. When I look at which is also very important, I look at the names of the files, which are the clips which were given. And I can see that the first shot was 3A take 2. The following shot, it's scene 4A take 4. So they are different scenes. The way how it was shot and designed by the director is that these are different scenes. I don't know, because I watched the film for only once, I have to see if the guy who is passing by the camera is the same guy who is in the next shot. The only way I can know is that looking at his shoes and the pants. No, there's a completely different guy. So it means that it is a different actor, so it is a parallel action. Which means that, once again, it's an aesthetic choice. Do I cut this? Do I do the hard cut with the dialogue? I'm going from one location to another. So if I do, I will do the same what I did. I just go one frame over and do the fade. And then I'm looking at the next shot. What is happening is
Yeah, well, because
the dialogue pre-laps or overlaps with the outcoming shot. So the editorial choice and the directorial choice was that actually we don't want to have separate locations, even they are happening at the same time. They want them to be integrated together, that they are happening. It's an aesthetic decision. So it means that I have to follow it. There is two ways of doing this. Keep in mind that I know that there will be backgrounds provided as well, which backgrounds provided by the background editor may actually tie this whole scene together. But I also provide some idea so we are on the same page, so they are not clashing. The backgrounds cut by the editor, the background editor will not clash with my dialogue, especially that we are shooting on location outside, so the environment is loud. It's not a room tone, right?
yeah, well,
So I can hear some now, it's like a clipped breath.
yeah, well, because
Okay. I am making decision, and let's assume that this was the director who wanted this as well. I will overlap. I will make the crossfades. I will make that they are very close to each other so it sounds very even. At the mix, we can play with the backgrounds and the dialogue to give them slightly different reverb, to sort of EQ the background slightly different way. If we want to feel the difference, that they are not really very, very close to each other, but they are in different parts of the town. So it means that I have to create tones to give the ability for the mixer to mix. I need one extra track. It will be my work track. I don't know why, started calling this junk many, many years ago, and it just stayed this way with me. So everything what I work with, it's a junk. So now I have to, because I retaught my idea, I know that this shouldn't be a hard cut, which I did, right? But I will first deal with the incoming shot. I will move this on my work track, expand this. So I'm trying now to find the tone. I'm trying to create
you say go.
it's 3 seconds. It's actually a very decent amount of. This is very easy creating the tone. I don't have to do anything. It's so spurs dialogue that there is a lot of ambience without anybody talking. Dialogue editing, it's all about tones, extensions, reverses, duplications. You have to make everything sound smooth. Which way you get there, it's really how you get there. You constantly look for tones to extend the cuts. So this is the piece of take which I took. Now I have to attach this to the head of the second shot. This is all garbage.
Yeah, well,
This is some.
yeah, what?
If I cut very, very tight to him, well, yeah, and move this here, I see if it works.
Yeah, well.
Well,
because-
obviously, as you can hear, is
Yeah,
a completely
I moved this
different.
I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay?
It's a
Come
very,
on.
very different level to begin with. Well, let's see if this is the only level. This is actually very difficult for me to judge. On headphones, I will know if these tones are matching, but
Yeah, well, because,
still too loud.
yeah, well, because, yeah, well,
This is like a tip which I will give you. I'm assuming that it's matching. On the headphones would be much better for me to do because I took this exactly from the same take. When the tone is very, very close, but it doesn't match really perfectly, the best way to avoid any conflict is when you bring the tone which you are extending just to the first modulation of the word and put a very, very small fade. By the time we as an audience realize that it had changed, it will be gone. Because we really are following, we're not listening to the tone, we are listening to the dialogue, we are listening to the story. So I have to do the best way so you're not distracted as an audience.
Yeah, well, because
And you don't hear the end, I mean the incoming, you don't hear the cut. Now I'll play them together and see.
yeah, well, because
Well, I can hear the drop of the tone. It means that I have to extend over this and put the fade. Same here. The longer the tone, the easier for the mixer or you later on to mix them, to blend outcoming take with the incoming take, because you can make a very slow ramp up instead of very fast to catch the line of dialogue. So longer the tone in situation like that is much better for the mixer to mix or for you to mix if this is what you will do. I have to see what I have here to extend this. The problem to create the sound from the first shot is that the guy is constantly moving this cap. And we know for sure that we want to, we decided that we will weave the sounds, we'll not make hard cuts.
yeah, well,
Also because editorial they're overlapping, but it doesn't mean
yeah,
that
well,
this guy
because-
walking now will hear the other guy still shaking
Yeah,
the can,
I'm-
the cap, right? We don't want to create that they are this close. So that's why I cannot just simply do the natural extension, because you still can hear him shaking. If I do that, sorry, if I do that, and you play, probably will be okay, but it's slappy.
yeah, well, because
You can hear the guy shaking the cap, and we don't want it, right? So I have to create, I will just undo that. I have to create the tone from here. Look for something. Seems like I have something here. Okay. What I just did now is very slappy in a sense that I really should extend the entire take and really listen from the beginning to the end, looking for the pieces. This is not to prove that I know what I'm doing, it's to show you how to do that. So your precision has to be, you cannot be lazy, you cannot just simply just grab something which sounds more or less okay. You actually have to really listen very carefully to every single frame of the take provided to create the best tone you can. Okay, we can hear some movements there, which of course shouldn't be there. As you can see, I'm in the shuffle mode. This is the only time I edit something in the shuffle mode, and I always edit this only on the work track. I never use shuffle mode on my created dialogue tracks, because then I will start losing sync. And I don't want to think. I don't want to be worrying about, oh, did I use the shuffle mode? Do I have something after this take? I don't want to even bother. So I use the shuffle mode only when I'm on my work track. Okay, this is lip smack, which we don't want. I'll just lose it. I have a pop. If I think that this cut is okay. Oh, come on. I don't want that. There's some movement. You know, in this case, because it's a actually decent amount of tone I have, I don't even have to leave this little thing here. But I just simply wanted to show you how little I have to save to be able to create the tone. Sometimes I really create the tone from 10 frames looking between the words. I have to put a little crossfade here again, because I can hear there is a pop. There is another, I think it's a leap. And there is a movement. Okay, so I created 22 frames long piece. To make this slightly longer, I will duplicate that, but to avoid this loopy sound, I will reverse the second part. It still will be loopy, but the loop will sound slightly longer. It will be every 44 frames, not every 22. So in Audio Suite, in the other, there is a function called reverse. I just render and play it. Starts looping. The loop sense, it's slightly longer. It's not every 22 frames, but it's every 34 frames. Now, I want this to be one continuous file, so I don't have to keep doing that constantly, keeping this as a one piece. So in the reverse, I will go to the duplicate, in the other, I'm sorry, and create a continuous file. Go back to the slip mode, and now I will attach this to the end of the first shot, which we had. The very good thing of when you think about dialogue, because as I said, it's constantly dealing with tones, which you keep extending so you can weave the sounds in and out of recorded production. As a sort of one way of doing this is that it's very good to make a cut or attach tone to the dialogue spoken or to the outgoing take is under another word. Meaning that even if this tone is not perfect, which we will see how it matches, it's actually not bad. It's maybe a little bit too loud. I will do the crossfade again. But it's good to sort of make the joint when on the other take somebody is talking or there's a movement, because it's less audible. You just distract, essentially, the ear of the audience to the fact that you did something.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay?
Right? The only thing, so it plays very smoothly. The only thing is that there is it's a volume difference. The first shot, it's louder recorded than the incoming shot. I could correct that, but because the difference of the volume is not horrible yet, it's not like jumping, I will leave it and make this decision later on when I start mixing and I have all the elements brought together. If the difference was 15 dB, obviously I would have to bring them close to each other. But this is probably like a 2 dB difference, so it doesn't really matter. This is not where my brain goes. I am at this point, I am at editing, not mixing. So I don't want to be distracted and sort of start using different parts of my brain to start thinking about mixing the film. I am editing. There are two completely different parts of making sound for the film. They rely on each other, they need each other, but you cannot do both at the same time, because then you will not do either of them well. So as I said, this is probably like 2 dB or 3 dBs difference between first shot and the second, but it's not outrageous. It doesn't distract me when I'm watching this. I'm not going to correct that.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay? Come on.
The guy is very wet, how we say that. He has a lot of in his performance.
Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay? Cleared out drawers.
Which makes me think that this is the laugh of his, because Boom would never catch it. If you get very close, you can see what it's making this sound. You can see on the waveform that this is what is causing the problem. When I started editing, this tool, pencil, didn't exist. So I had to learn how to eliminate this kind of blemishes different way. I just cut them out. And even though this tool exists probably for the last 3 versions of Pro Tools, I still cut them out. I do not use the pencil, mostly because I think I'm okay cutting this out, and also because, you know, if you don't have a good hand, like I don't have, like you can see, I really created another problem.
Out drawers for you.
Well, in this case, actually, I didn't.
Cleared out drawers.
No, I did. I just create one, I change one pub for another. Some people are excellent doing that. So I am encouraging you, because the tool is given, use the pencil, but you have to really, because what you need to do is you have to smooth this waveform and make this smooth. I don't know why I cannot ever really do it correctly. So I keep trying, and it's faster for me to cut this out. So I will show you how I cut this out. Cutting this out, I have to bring the 2 files then together because I'm creating the whole. So I'm playing with sync. I will remove 5 samples, but nevertheless it's sync. So I just simply see where I can make a cut. On the word, on the sound j, is very easy to do that. So I will just make a cut here. I go back to my speedy actor. I will look at the waveform and see how much I can remove. I know I have to remove this. I cannot remove only that. I have to find the whole, I look at the pattern of the waveform, and I can see that between this is like a sort of one section of sound, right? You can see that this one starts looking exactly the same. So this is how much I will try to cut out. I probably could cut out less, but I just simply want to show you that. Then I bring this in. I mean, there's other way to be precise like that, but I just can't show you. So now I created the hole here, but let's play.
Already cleared out drawers for you, okay?
Okay, so this is clean.
Cleared out.
There is no pop.
Out
The George, if I do that, I just simply extend the G. No, don't ever tell director that I'm doing that.
I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay?
Right? So the cut is made, the pop is taken out, and we don't really hear that I add 5 samples or whatever I did, half a frame or quarter of a frame to J sound.
For you, okay?
Here we have the same. This would be very simple because it's just on the movement. So to remove this, where are we? To remove this, it's not really much of a problem. I can just simply cut this out without even thinking twice and bring this in, because this movement,
Drawers for you, okay? Come on, drawers.
we don't hear his footsteps anyway, so it's just simply a tone. Am I making sort of this clear how? There is also, so I would just cut this out, and because I forgot that there's actually a line behind.
Come on.
I very often I become lazy. And then I would extend, where am I? This.
Okay? Come on.
I still can hear a lot of it. The isotope or the wave, there are plugins which are sort of declicking, decrackling, this kind of sound. So I don't think we have it here. Noise reduction, we actually do. I may try, right? Because these are really lip smacks of the actors, and it can be very annoying. Sometimes the directors say, you know what? He's doing this for the entire performance, and we have 2 hours of him in this film. You cannot keep doing this. So you start liking that. And it becomes part, as I was mentioning before about the loud floors, it becomes a part of the performance. And so I would then cut out only the most obnoxious ones and leave this little thing as it is. I may try to see if the the wave noise reduction will do that. My guess is it won't. I never do stuff like that. If I use any of the plugins, because I'm creating the new file, I never do it on the original one, so I just simply would make a copy of it, essentially even of the entire track, and just run. So I would do the copy, I would preserve the original one. I usually go to the 80% of the threshold and do the reduction of 100%. And just run it and see if it even helped.
Yeah, well, okay. So,
Not really.
yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay? Come on.
It didn't do anything. Isotope may be better in this as this is another plugin for the dialogue and clicks like that. So in this case, if you have any director or you are very, very annoyed by it, it's like a surgery. You will take 3 hours per take.
Yeah, well, what?
So keep removing that. Where did I lost it?
Yes. See? Okay. See? Oh, wait. Yeah, well.
Somewhere here. So then I would do exactly the same thing. And if you are good with the pencil tool, you can use the pencil tool. But if you are not, on the headphones I would hear it. I cannot hear it now. Okay. Here it is. Let's get closer to it. Okay, here it is. Right? So now I would cut this out again. Either do what I just did, what I showed you, or I would try to do the pencil, because if this actor is so smacky that it will take a lot of time. And dialogue is all about the precision and it's about the patience. If you don't have a patience, you cannot really cut dialogue, because if you get annoyed with this kind of things, then you start doing the sloppy job, so it's better to leave it than do it badly. But essentially, on a high-profile job, where I'm higher hand and everybody's watching my performance, none of it could stay in the dialogue track. It would have to be removed.
Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay? Come on.
So in this case, as I said, he has a lot of the smack, so you would have to literally remove every single one, as I did, to show you how to do that. You either use the pencil tool or you just cut them out. If you do cut them out, and especially in this case, this is 7 second, 21 frames take, you cannot just simply keep cheating, and because at the end you will lose sync. So you have to do what I did. You look for the place when you can cut, you move this together, and you go back to the sync. Because we are removing such a small, tiny parts of frame, the sync really wouldn't be affected. Although it's not the most pure way of doing that. But there is really not other way around it. You either have to live with it, use the pencil tool, or cut this out. If you decide to cut the sound with the laugh and the boom, and this is the boom, this is the laugh, you bring them both. What I do, because this scene may have a laugh and a boom, the next scene can have 2 laughs and 1 boom. So there will be, every scene will have a slightly different configuration. What you try to do when you organize your tracks in the dialogue, you organize them by scenes. So you are not trying to find the formula for 90 minutes film, because you will never find it. Because each scene is shot different way, it's mic'd different way. You have 1 actor, 5 actors, 2 actors, so obviously the whole miking system of the scene is different. But you try to sort of be consistent in a scene. So if we decide to cut with the boom and the laugh, what I do to make my life simpler, I will group dialogue 3 and 4, and I would call it, can you see it? I just put this here. I would call it dialogue 2 and 3. Everybody can use their own system of naming the groups. By grouping the tracks, for those of you who know Pro Tools, of course, it's very obvious. I just simply, they become as a one. So when I make a cut in both. Okay. I will go back in a second to this shot which we left. I will come back to it in a second, what we are doing with it. But now I want to deal with the incoming third shot in the film. As a picture editor, if you cut this, you should never leave any sort of sound, any voice of the director or crew member who is giving the command for a scene, because it distracts the audience. If you do the screening for friends or even for yourself to see how the cut is playing, how your scene or entire film is playing, this kind of additional words are very distractive. For you, maybe as a director and editor, when you do that, you sort of can tune out because you understand what it is. For the audience, for people who are just simply your audience to give you the notes for the rough cut, even if they will hear it's your voice as a director, it shouldn't be there, you take them out from the flow of the story. It's a split of a second. They may not even realize that, but it actually does not help for the judgment. And this is what you do when you call your friends and want them to help you with the cut, to say, tell me where this story doesn't play, what is wrong. This is really sort of like a slappiness and mistake, which doesn't help you. I'm just lecturing you what not to do, but it has nothing to do with the dialogue. But actually, I have to cut this out, right? Because it doesn't belong there. So I have to remove that. There is two ways of doing this. What I will do first, I will try to bring the scene and see what is on the head of the steak, if I can actually use it. Walk, I cannot, right? But I'll try to see how this cut works. Okay, there is some. Okay, if I lose that, shush, I'm in the wrong place. I should change the preferences because that's why it doesn't work for me. If I lose this, I lose this. All of it is just simply listening and making decisions. This is too loud. I may get away. Yeah, I just have to make crossfade. There is something. This is probably this actor's coming in footstep, but because we don't see him, it doesn't read as a footstep. I know, because I already played this 5 times, it doesn't read as a footstep. We don't want this there. If you decide as a director that you want actually to hear approaching person, it has to be Foley's. Still too loud. Okay, so I just play with the volume. This is the greatest thing ever been invented. So I don't want him to say walk, obviously. So I'm hoping that I will keep expanding the head of this shot and I will actually bring this to the cut. And I was right. There is a pop, which I have to cover. Crossfade. Okay. So I resolved the problem because I have to cut out the director saying walk or whatever he said, action or whichever word he used, which shouldn't belong there. Now we have to see what we are going here.
Come on.
Sorry.
I've
What we are doing
cleared out
here.
drawers for you, okay? Come on.
This is sort of a difficult situation to make a decision, because these 2 shots, even they are happening, this is parallel action, we decided to blend them. We decided to overlap the tones only because editorially they did overlap the dialogue.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I'm a little busy, but I've already cleared out drawers for you, okay? Come on.
Now, I don't know. Should we do the same? Because once again, the person who is putting money into this scan, it's not our main actor who is talking, who is on the phone. So I have to decide what I'm going to do. Am I going to cut the entire scene sort of intuitively? When they overlap the dialogue, I will overlap to help the mixer or myself when I'm mixing to blend them. Or in this case, we are in two different places. I will actually use the time cut, location. It's not a time cut, it's location cut. And it's a really pure intuition. There is no right or wrong how you do that. I would have to have a conversation with the director and say what they want. But because this is my film, I would say, well, in this case, the first one, I overlap them because this is editorially what I needed to do or wanted to do. But here I actually will do the hard cuts because I am not mixing, but I'm thinking about the soundtrack as an integrity of the film. I know that there will be backgrounds which will be provided for the scene, for the film, which I will cut to make the slasher fuller than just the production recorded. So I, in this case, will make a hard cut. So I will just do one frame, overlap, and same here. Go out, go away rather, I should say. And let's see how it sounds.
Hey, come on.
Okay. And because the next coming shot is of the guy walking, and once again is the same style that the director is overlapping, is prelapping essentially his dialogue, then I would do the same method. I would do the cross between these two shots, but in this case, to create the isolation emotionally of the guy,
Come on.
I would actually not overlap. So it's all of it, even cutting dialogue, you are making a certain aesthetic decisions because this then allows the audience to feel. These are very small little details which when you watch the movie, you never think about it as an audience. But as a creator, you have to sort of think what impact these decisions are making on your story. So if you want to have this isolation of him, feeling the change of the location of the homeless guy and the guy who is on the cell phone chatting with somebody, that they are living in the same space but in different worlds, by making this cut, you sort of exaggerate this little bit. I have to also keep in mind and let you know that even as a dialogue editor, I have to also know what it's decided before. There is a music playing to this whole scene. So the music will really tie all this, both worlds of this man together. It will be a glue. It will be something which connects them, not them as characters in the film, but connects them in your idea of how you are creating the space. The music is the emotional vehicle for your scene. So that's why I think it would be interesting to cut this sort of mix up two styles of once in a while, because editorially you are overlapping the dialogue to make the spaces together, but when there is no overlap, to actually make this separate. And then you can always, by mixing, either exaggerate this or minimize this difference. The second scene, the first scene which I sort of show you how to approach was the outside scene, exterior scene. And they are sometimes, in a sense, easier to cut, even though they are not easier to mix. Because louder the background, louder the traffic, then less you can do as a dialogue editor. There is not room for incredible precision of the cleanness of the tone, of the environment, because it's loud and obnoxious anyway. You have a traffic, it's a sort of constant dim of the outside location. So there is less room for precision. It's easier sort of to cut. When we are coming to inside, to interior scenes, then you really have to have headphones on. I mean, you always have to have them. But it's the detail, the pristine, the cleanness of it, it's absolutely much, much more crucial. I will just use 2 takes of this interior scene to show you what is the approach. The concept is the same. You have to create tones. The dialogue is all about tones, reverses, and duplications. I keep repeating myself because there is not really much more into it. And there are certain rules how to do that, but rules are to be broken. So at the end, your ear is really the final judge if the scene plays or not. The major idea or the approach to cutting dialogue, which I didn't really stress in the first scene, the exterior scene, is that when I screen the scene, I'm looking how many shots I have, meaning not how many cuts did the editor did, but how many shots, how many angles I have. And also you can do that by looking at the labels on the clips. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter what angle we are in, we have the same, oh maybe I'm lying, okay. I'm just trying to see the method which he has. So this is shot 9.2a take 3. So this is one angle, which is
Hey.
I don't know what it is.
All right?
It's him.
Yeah.
9.5a, it's the close-up of this actor. So everybody is labeling them different ways. General idea is that you try or you should to keep the same shots on the same dialogue tracks. So it means that 9.2a, it should be, if you decide, because it's the first shot in the scene, on dialogue 1, and then the next shot, which is 9.5a, it should be on the other track. Very often my students are saying that, oh, I should split it by character. So very often, even if it's a two-shot, they split the take into half and put the John on track 1 and Mary on track 2, even they are in the two-shot. Never do that, because this doesn't matter. If they are in the one shot together, it means that they should stay as an integral take together. The students would say, well, but you EQ the female voice different than the male voice. Yes, it is true. But what affects really the quality of the voice, they sound differently because they are two different actors to begin with. But what the mixer is really dealing with is the environment while they are sitting. So if the camera is pointing at me, it means that the microphones are pointing at me. If I then move and I'm in the other corner, the angle is changing. So the background of what microphone is picking up is changing as well. So mixer is dealing with both, but mostly he can EQ my voice the same way, but what he has to really hear is the background, and the background is changing with the angle of the camera is changing. So that's why we have to be consistent and try to keep the same shots, the same angles on the same tracks. So let's go to this first take. I will do the same. I would sort of decide if I have boom, laugh, camera, mic, what I have.
Hey.
This sounds like a boom.
Hey.
It's exactly the same, so it's just double the same microphone.
Hey.
This is a laugh.
Hey.
It sounds the same way. So I will choose the boom and the laugh and bring this up. To help myself, I will group dialogue 1 and 2 together. So they work as a once.
Hey. You all right?
Okay. I've dealt with this, so I have to see what is happening. When I play the guide track, because I have a hole, when you look here, it's a hole between the shots.
Hey.
Okay. Even on the guide track, you can hear very clearly that there is a hole. We hear the tone disappearing. You cannot have it. It's a major mistake which students make that because nothing is happening, there is no dialogue, they just simply leave the hole, which you can see here on the OMFs, which is left. Your job is to fill it up. It cannot be a hole because even just playing the guide track with the music is not covering up essentially this hole. So what I will do is I have to sort of open this up and see what I have here.
Action. Hey.
Now it's a question. This happens very, very often. I'm thinking why the director or picture editor didn't use this movement.
Hey.
We see that he's walking from somewhere. He's holding 2 bottles of beer. He's walking from the kitchen. I'm sort of assuming that it was only because I don't know why the director didn't want to use this extension. So I will just use it. It's still too short because I didn't start the scene from the beginning actually. So it's my mistake. Let me do that this way. Let me do this proper way. Okay. Now it's better because I started later than I supposed to. Sorry. Okay. Well, we need his movement, right? We need him to move from the kitchen to the room. So let's see what is happening here. Okay. This I understand is some mic is. But if I remove that and just try to play them together, let's see.
Hey.
Okay. There is a time cut. I'm assuming that the shots had a little bit more into it, that he actually, in the second shot, is my assumption, was actually he picked him up earlier. This probably this shot. This shot, I would hope that started at the door where he's sort of leaving the kitchen and coming here. They are cutting this by inserting the picture of this couple. So if I play this the way how I played right now, because I have to recreate something the director didn't do. He didn't give me the guidance of picture editor. They just did what they did. It could work. If I want to be sloppy, knowing that the music is playing loud, I would say, you know what, there is not much more I can do. It's perfectly fine. But what bothers me, thinking sort of logically about the film language, is that I don't think I need him breathing, because he's sort of too close here. I don't want him breathing. I want more of the movement. So I would try to lose this. But then if I lose it, I have a hole. How am I going to fill out this hole? I know that when I expanded this, the director says action, so I cannot really use it.
Alpha, take 3.
So this is really how early I can use this take. In situations like that, I would go and look for, this is take 3. I would go to take 1, take 4, 2, 4, 5, depends how many takes they recorded, and steal the movement to feel that we are, to fill in this hole and make this actually us as an audience feel that he's moving from the fridge here. What I would also have to do, and this is partially, I don't know if he's opening, I would have to look. Is he opening the beer cans or he's not? I mean, not cans, bottles. Let me look at the action and see if he's, when he's walking here.
Hey.
No, they're not open. Okay. So, because I was thinking that very often what it is that when people cut the picture, they don't think about that. But I would look if there, I would open the takes and see if actually I have the sounds of the open movement, and I would just cut them off screen as it's cut to make the continuation. I know that I don't have anything on 9.2 take 3 to repeat. I don't want to repeat the movement. I want to add something. And when we open the take the shot before, there is lavalier is sort of acting out, meaning there is something what we cannot use.
Cut.
And there is one knock. I cannot reuse this. But I may try to cheat. And I said that I don't like this,
Oh no.
the breathing. I really don't. But what if I just do that?
No. Cut.
Okay, I don't want this knock because I don't know what this knock is.
No. Cut.
Okay. But maybe by doing what I just did, cheating a little bit, I may actually get away with okay. Okay.
Hey.
So now it's mixable, right? But we feel that there is movement missing. If you have budget for follies, just in the small gap between when he's sort of singing, you would add the battles cling because he's trying to carry them together. You would have few footsteps of his.
Hey.
And here he would be. If you have budget for follies. If you don't, your job as a dialogue editor is to pull all the takes which are covering this action when he's walking, well, when he's in the kitchen, and see what it's more in this shot on different takes, and also in the incoming tag. I would pull all the takes which were recorded and try to see if I can have 2 or 3 either footsteps or some kind of movement. Because he's sort of dying here. Technically, this is okay. Technically, if this was a budget, film with the budget when there is folly, I would say, okay, it's mixable, we are in the same location, it's a little bit of the movement, rest will be picked up by follies, so the scene, this cut, will work. Partially, there's a problem because everything gets static, right? The guy is moving. You would intuitively want to see what he's doing while we are hanging on the shot of this on the photograph. This is what it's sort of stopping the flow of the film. That's why the sound is so extremely important. I know that the director has music playing here.
Hey.
Now, seeing what is happening to the music and what is happening to the close-up of the shot, creatively, I know the director wants us to look at this image. So we want actually to lose the guy in the kitchen. He really is not important, the guy in the kitchen, really, because our main character is looking at the picture of a couple.
Hey.
So the way how it's cut, it's for us to pay attention as an audience, not to the guy in the kitchen dealing with the beer, but it's actually important, the photograph. How I know it? Because I listen to the guide track and I see what the director's intention is. The music is leading us. We are looking at the couple on this wall. They are more important than the guy in the kitchen, which doesn't change the fact that we shouldn't really, technically speaking, lose the guy. He's still there. Mix-wise, creatively, we will lose him, but we still should have his movement here. So as I mentioned before, I would look and pull out all the takes which are covering these 2 shots and create in this gap a little bit more of his movement. When we go to the mix, the guy in the kitchen, we will decide how to play it. We can deliberately lose the movement, but we have to provide the movement, which I don't have. So when you start cutting dialogue, besides getting the OMF from the director, from the picture department, or you yourself, you should have an access to every single take recorded on location. Even editorially, picture editorially, you are using 1/3, you should have all. Because I would now, to help this dead spot, this dead movement, I would pull all the takes from this shot and try to create a little bit more of the movement. I'm not saying that he has to have a racket in the kitchen because he's not doing anything. I was just checking if he opened the beer bottles. He didn't, because when we see him in this shot, these bottles are not open. So I cannot have that, but I want him to move somehow from one location to another. At the mix, we can decide, or you can decide creatively if we want to hear it or not, but it's absolutely needed. So having access to all the recorded sounds, it will allow you to bring the sound in and actually create the movement here. If the director doesn't provide that, or editor, your hands are tied, so it's more difficult for you to perform the job, but also in a sense, you are cheating the project, you are cheating the film, because you are not giving what the potentially can be given there. I have said that on the beginning that everybody can cut effects, not everybody can cut dialogue. And I don't mean it that not everybody can learn how to cut dialogue, because this is not really a brain surgery. It just requires patience, a lot of attention to detail, and understanding the concept, what the dialogue provides in the soundtrack of the film. When I say that everybody can cut effects, it means that if you know how to operate the software, in this our case Pro Tools, and you have imagination, you see something, you add the sound. You may not organize the session correctly for somebody else to mix it, but creatively, if you are creative, you can actually do that, because there is not much of a sort of technical straitjacket into it. Dialogue has a certain element of the straitjacket. There are rules which you have to follow. And the major rule would be the dialogue cannot have holes. You cannot drop the line of dialogue and pick it up 3 seconds later, not filling this up with anything else. The major mistake which first-time directors or students are making is that, oh, I will provide background, or music will cover this up. But as I play you here on the guide track, when they drop the production sound and pick it up later, there was a 3 seconds gap, you actually can hear it. So imagine in the theater when you have stereo mix, I'm not even talking about 5.1, these all holes will be heard of. So dialogue cannot have a hole. It always, every gap there is, people don't talk, you have to fill it up with the tone. So this is the most important thing in the dialogue. And as I said, the dialogue is sort of a spine for the film. So it has to play, the film should play with well-edited dialogue almost as almost finished project. You may lose the emotional cues or detail of the movement because you don't have effects. But the film should play, the story should be there if the dialogue is cut well and very, very clean. So when you start cutting dialogue, what you need to do, the first thing is remember to create the guide tracks, which will have a separation. The music will be one track, and the dialogue, the production, will be the second. They should not be married, because this really makes your heart as a dialogue editor much more harder, because you can constantly not only looking at the waveform and see that you are in sync, you have to keep scrolling and see, am I missing the line? Because you will never be as familiar with the film as a dialogue editor if you are a higher dialogue editor as you're supposed to be. When you are one person doing everything, it's your project, it's a very author project, of course you will then remember every line and every breath from the film, so then there is no danger of losing this. But you still should have separation of dialogue and music, because if you record ADR with the actors, you want them to have this clean dialogue only, or if you give your film to the composer, you don't want composer to be influenced by your temp music which you put into the film while you are editing this. You should have an access to every single take recorded on location, because this is when you are looking for alternate takes, alternate readings, covering the blemishes, as I was showing you here earlier, looking for the movement. The same like in the movement, it could be that you want to change the line, not the reading of it, meaning not the text, but the performance, because I don't know, somebody coughed on the line or something dropped down, and you don't want to ADR this because it's expensive. You have to bring the actor, you have to rent the studio. You can save these problems when you have an access to other takes. If you are doing everything on your own by yourself, have somebody in your crew, because you are not able to be everything, the director, the cinematographer, and sound recorders at the same time. I'm assuming that you have a crew of friends, family members, or colleagues. Have somebody to actually have the sound reports so you know how many takes were recorded. Have notes, which microphones you used and why you used, well, not why, but which one you used in which scene. If you cover this with one boom and two laughs, with one laugh, with boom only. Whatever you do, just make these notes, because then it saves you time. As I was showing you, I was scrolling trying to guess what microphones were used and why. It's time, which you would not have to, I would not have to use and spend if I have the sound report, because I would just simply see and said, okay, this scene is covered with one boom and laugh, clear. So this must be the boom, this must be the laugh. I can hear it, I can make a judgment, but sometimes there would be planted mic instead of boom. They essentially sound almost the same, but they don't have the flexibility of the boom, because it's a plant mic, it's one place. Then I am sort of confused. I have to find the moment when actor turns away from the plant mic to say, oh, this is a plant mic, it's not a boom, because otherwise boom operator would follow. So every information done well on production helps speed up the post-production, and then it makes your project simply better because you have a better control over it. When you are loading the material into the Avid, Final Cut Pro, or Premiere, label this correctly, because these numbers, these take names and scene names are absolutely crucial, because I know that if I want to find something 9.1a take 4, I know that take 4 is in the cut. Then if I have a sound reports or camera reports, I know how many takes were recorded, so I know how many options for alternate readings I can find, because this is the very, very important information for me. Don't forget about head and tail beep when you are finishing the session or you are finishing your cut, because when you mix it and then you bring this back into Final Cut Pro or Avid or Premiere, you have to line this up, and you don't want to line it up by looking at the lip sync, but you actually have the beep, the to pop, how they call it in California, and the countdown on the picture, which you lined up, and then you know that you are in perfect sync. It's another thing which is very simple and you don't have to really guess, you just do that. What is also very important, which I probably should say on the beginning, is when the picture is locked, it's finished, you should, if you are higher hand as a dialogue editor, you should demand to spot the film with the director and picture editor. Never allow yourself to be vulnerable and just simply take a project and say, okay, it's sort of self-explanatory, I know what I'm doing. Because people have different ideas. What is sort of very simple and straightforward for you, it may be very deep and complicated for the director, because he has some idea behind it. And if you don't ask the question, you will never know, and you shouldn't assume. So spotting session is something extremely important for you as an editor, because it gives you the insight to the director's creative concept of the film. If you are doing all of it by yourself, I know that you then sleep, breathe, eat the film, and you know every frame of it. But actually, it's very, very good to step back, watch it, and say, okay, what I really want. Do I want too much? Or what my idea is, did I shot this the way that it actually can be done, sound can be done the way how I want it now, but if you didn't conceptually think about that when you're shooting, there may be no oral space for a lot of elements being added to the scene, because the scene is too busy to begin with. So then you have to sort of tone this down and think, okay, how am I going to resolve this creative aspect? As an example, if this is confusing what I'm saying, is if you have a scene in the apartment when two people are talking, and you want the building, the neighbors be heard and be alive, if you didn't shoot this the way that you ask actor to actually have some pauses in their dialogue, they are not sort of talking on the top of each other, then this this idea of the building having the life of its own will never play out, because there is no oral space, there is no enough gaps to create a life outside of the walls of the apartment where the scene is happening. So if you want this to have, you have to sort of think in advance. Otherwise, you are asking yourself to do something which will never play, or you ask people who you hire to create the building having its own life, which will never really get across, because you did not shoot the scene or edit the scene the way that there is a room, a space for this building to have its own life, to have the parallel lives essentially at the same time. So all of these decisions have to be made ahead of the time, and then they also have to be conveyed to people who you are hiring. They cannot read your mind. So spotting session is something very, very important, that you actually have a conversation with the director. And I very often say that to my students, that very often our spotting sessions are almost like a diarrhea of thought. I'm sorry for the word. So what I mean by it is that there is nothing wrong to say. Even the most stupid idea for little scene may actually, it's stupid for the scene, but it triggers the idea of the director or the other editor you are sitting in the room for the next scene. So it's a very creative process, and more you talk and throw the ideas at, then you actually allow other people to be creative too. So the ego at this point should be sort of taken out, and even if it sounds stupid, if you have an idea, you should say it, because as I said, it can trigger somebody's creative input.